Hello and welcome to Junkyard Studio. I found online this, what appears to be a mechanism for recording onto wax cylinders. But what we have here looks like a recording head, and what I need is just the pieces off of it. I just need that screw and where the stylus goes for an Audax head that I bought that didn't have it. Problem being, this thing is rusted solid and that screw is incredibly tiny, and I don't want to risk breaking it. I'm going to record the process of getting this apart and hopefully repairing the Audax head, because I don't even know what this is. And I mean, if you look at the internals of this head and the Audax, whichever, they're both the same company, I believe. I'm going to put a little oil in there. But if you look at the construction of these two heads, they're really not that much different. It could even be that they made it in the same factory, put a different plate on it, who knows. But I still want to take the pieces off of this one and maybe save the coil. This is the Audax, and although it's much cleaner, it doesn't look all that much different from what's sitting on this mechanism I purchased. So there's a pretty good chance that the parts are going to be compatible. I put some oil on the stylus screw. It hasn't been sitting very long, so I'm hoping that I get better results as it sits. But we've got a little bit of movement, and that's good. So as I said before, this screw is very fine. I'm afraid to give it a lot of pressure because there isn't a lot of material there to hold it. So if I put a lot of pressure on it, it's just going to snap off into this stylus holder, and it's going to probably ruin the piece. And that's the whole reason I bought this, is just for that piece. So it's a very delicate operation. I think I'm probably going to leave this for a while, let the oil set in, and try and back it out slowly. But it gave a little bit, and that's a good sign. Sometimes when you're dealing with seized bolts, sometimes you want to tighten them up a little bit and then try and release them. And I did that with the channel locks, and that might have been a little hasty. I could have broke it very easily. I should have let it sit for a half hour, 45 minutes, hour, and then tried to move it. But it ended up working this time, and I kind of don't want to push my luck. I think I could maybe get a little more out of it, but I'm afraid. So we're just going to put the oil in there, let it sit, work it back and forth, and see what we get. And after a copious amount of 3-in-1 oil and working the screw back and forth, I finally was able to get it to back all the way out. Took some time and some patience, but it was worth it. If that would have broke off in there, we'd have a lot of work ahead of us, and it might not have been able to come out of there without damage. So when you have a stuck bolt like that, there's a couple different methods you can use to remove it. The best thing to do, and I didn't really have a whole lot, but I still removed all the debris from the affected area. I just had like shavings because this is magnetic, so it picked up some metal shavings. They probably weren't in the way. So I still removed that, and then I'm lucky here because I have 2 entry points to put any sort of lubricant or oil to help the process along. So I both put oil here, and I worked it back and forth. And when I tweaked it with the channel locks and I got that little bit of movement, I could see the oil level, because there was an oil bubble in there. I could see that moving back and forth as I moved the stylus screw. So I took about 15-20 minutes, and I only had about a half turn. I moved it back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, put a little more oil back and forth, and then it just kind of gave out and came out. The best thing to do with this kind of situation is a lot of lubricant, and just to be very patient and work it back. If it would have broke off in there, it probably wouldn't be worth anything to me. Trying to drill that out without messing up the stylus holder is almost impossible. I could have done it with a pin vise maybe, but there's a lot of room for error. So I've removed the screws to the stylus holding mechanism, and I'm hoping I'm just able to pull the unit away from the magnet like that. As you can see, there's our coil wires. Oh, you probably can't see that looking at your screen. You can see the 2 little coil wires there, but they go into this wire, which is completely shot. I'd like to be able to save the coil. It's probably still good even though it's soaked in oil. 9 times out of 10 when you purchase these old heads, you're going to have this kind of wiring, this old rubber. As you can see, it's worthless. It has to be replaced. So I will now remove the magnet, and then we'll take these pieces apart and try and transfer the parts over to our Audax head. One thing of note is there is what I believe used to be rubber there in between these two. These 2 pieces are separate. If you look at them under here, they separate there, and there's like rubber holding this stylus holder in place. But as I'll show you, that rubber, just like the cable, is crusty. It's destroyed. It's turned hard. So we'll have to figure out some sort of dampening material to replace that with. You can see that piece just kind of hanging out there. There's nothing I can really grab it with. I'm afraid of damaging something. There we go. And if I take this, it'll crumble in my hands just like that wiring. Yeah. So we'll have to come up with some sort of dampening material. It's probably just some kind of thin sheet rubber, is my guess. I am absolutely guessing at a lot of this. This is my first rebuild. I'm basically just transferring parts and hoping it works. But I thought I'd take you along and show you my process and see what kind of results we get. And I just kind of wanted to show off this thing. I mean, the only thing I can think of, and that's what was listed in the listing, was it's for a wax cylinder recorder. But every wax cylinder recorder I've seen, I'm not very well versed in them, so that could be part of it. Everyone I've seen didn't have a recording head on it. It just had a speaker and a needle. So this is kind of interesting in that respect to me. It may not be interesting to somebody that knows more about these. Maybe they already know what it's from. I mostly just saw spare parts and I had to take the chance. As another experiment, because I'm not very familiar with these heads, I'm learning as you're learning. I have another RCA head. We don't know what this is. The Audax probably will take the same thing because we're going to transfer this. But I took this one's actually out of this RCA and it looks like it's been repaired. But I took the one we just rescued from this head and it threads in the same. At the very least, the stylus screw looks like you could get it from probably any recording head, or maybe even some of those old phono cartridges that looked like recording heads. Interesting to find that out. I don't have a whole lot of heads to test it with. I'll try and test more with it and see if my theory holds true. At least between these it works. This probably won't focus, or it'll focus on my scummy nails. That's what manufacturing does to you. The threads on this are not very good. But it still threads, even in the RCA head. I'm going to say that it's okay. I don't know that I'd have a die that small to be able to clean it up. I think I'm just kind of stuck with what I got. I might actually be able to just remove this without taking the magnet out. I can take the magnet out later. It looks like it just kind of separates there. That's some crusty rubber, that's for sure. But very interesting to me. Don't want to damage that. Hopefully you caught all that. I can't keep my eyes on the screen at the same time. There's our coil. Looks like it's mostly okay. Got a little oil on it. Couldn't help it. But it looks like this had a little bit of rubber around it. That is now crust. And that had a little bit of rubber on it. I think this is going to transfer to our Audax. I am happy about that. I'm going to clean this up and try and dry fit it. So I'm back at the Audax here. I've removed the Audax coil. The Audax coil actually looks a bit smaller than the other coil. So I'm going to stick with the original Audax coil, even though it's missing. It seems to be shedding some of the beeswax or whatever that was in there. I slid that out of place just to kind of dry fit my stylus holder into position. Looks kind of rough. I might have to pull the mechanism. Let's set this aside. This piece might have to slot it a little bit. Well, no. I think I'm going to have to loosen these screws, but it should slide through here into the center with the coil. I know it already fits in the coil. So I think we're going to be good to go. And then I'll just have to find some rubber, some new dampening material to put in there. Considering the prices that technicians, and if you can even find one, technicians are charging to fix these, and I paid a little under $100 for this thing. I think I made out. If this works, it's going to be pretty solid. Well, unfortunately, there wasn't a way I could film that and do it at the same time. It was very delicate work. Those two coil leads, they're kind of loose on this unit, and I didn't want to move it around a lot because they're teeny tiny. But I got it in there, and all I did was I had to run the stylus holder, which is a little bit too much to the left. There's going to be some adjustment in there. I'm sure that rubber damper up here is probably no good, judging by the rest of the rubber. And I probably need to come up with some other damping material. But I had to run that stylus holder through the coil into that rubber damper and slide this piece in and tighten it down. I think it'll be good enough just to make sure that the coil's not, I've got an ohms reading, but it'll be good enough just to make sure that the coil isn't dead and we can get some audio out of it. And that's going to be the next test. After that, we can worry about, we can worry about damping material and finding something to replace that with. As long as we can get audio and get at least the cup check on here, we know we're good, and it's worth spending more time on. This is something that I had contacted a couple of people about, and you got a bunch of different answers, like, oh, we'll have to fabricate something, and this, that, and the other, and really all I needed to do was find a similar head and swap parts. I got pretty lucky on that. I basically just eyeballed it from the photo, and it looked similar, and I went for it. This one, you can see the coil is much larger. I wonder if that's a different ohm, or if it's supposed to be a reproducer and not a cutting head. Not sure. I'll probably never know, because I got my parts out of it, and I really don't need the rest of it. Now that we got our stylus holder in, our next test is going to be the cup check. We're going to put a stylus into the holder. We're going to feed it some audio. I happen to have a steel embossing stylus here that I'm just going to put in for our tests. Our stylus fits pretty good. That's comforting. I'm not seeing a whole lot of gap, so it's not moving around. Looks pretty straight up and down. Isn't a lot of movement. That was another concern of mine. This particular head has these connectors, which I normally, on all my other heads, I don't use those. So I'm gonna have to crock clip something just to get a test going. I've gone over to 1/4-inch audio connectors for all of my heads because it's just easier to interface with the amps that I have. So I will come up with a test rig for that. I'll get our solo cup. Actually have it right here. So we've already been doing some testing. We'll feed it some audio and see if we fix this. As kind of a bonus to this video before we do the cup check, I wanted to open a few of these heads that I have to show the similarities. Some of them are extremely similar, and some of them are a little different. Kind of to prove my theory, at least with these three different types. We have an Audax, we have a radio tone, which is a Webster, and we have two different RCAs, which in a moment you'll see how different they actually are. Oh, I was incorrect. The Webster or radio tone, or whichever version you specifically received, does not fit in the RCA. So there is a difference depending on what head you get. I might have gotten luckier than I initially expected with that head. I think the stylus holder, well, there might be significant differences in the stylus holders too. Let's take a look. These are the two. This is the RCA and the radio tone stylus screw. It actually doesn't look a whole lot different, but it's just enough where the radio tone is not compatible with the RCA. Right now I'm just going to take the stylus out of these units because I've been trying to cut with them. That's, if you've seen my other videos, it's been an ongoing struggle. Hopefully soon I'll have this figured out. I'm constantly working on a million different things and haven't had a whole lot of time lately to come back to it. I'm hoping this winter changes things, so I'll have more indoor time than outdoor time. So we already know that the two RCAs, maybe not. And actually the two RCA units that I have, the stylus screws are also of different sizes. So what I'm starting to see of all my different heads is I got way luckier than I initially anticipated with these parts actually fitting. I would imagine that if the stylus holder takes a different screw, that it probably has a completely different stylus holding unit. But if it was roughly the same shape, as long as it fit into the coil, it probably would have worked. But I think my chances were a lot slimmer than I had initially anticipated, which is probably why the technicians that I spoke to said that they would probably have to fabricate something, unless they had a stockpile of parts from which to choose from. I'm gonna stop the video for now, and then I'll come back when I have all this work done, because I don't want to sit there and fast forward everything. There's all four heads with the covers taken off. The parts are actually less interchangeable than I initially thought, but you can see the Audax has almost an entirely different design from each of these other units. It's probably more similar to the Webster, which is actually kind of interesting because the Webster is kind of considered a low-end head, than it is to the two RCAs. And the two RCAs are most similar to each other. Each one of them kind of takes a different approach at suspending the coil and the stylus holder. The magnets are mostly the same, with the consideration of the Webster's magnet looking, as far as composition, to be maybe a little less quality. I have, as far as the cup check goes, to be honest with you, since I haven't done it with the Audax, the RCAs are looking to be, are sounding the best through the cup check. the cut is really going to tell us what which one's the best. So we'll hopefully get into that very soon. I've got everything set up here. I'm going to play some audio, and we'll see if we get anything. First, I'm going to check, see if I've got any audio coming out, if my connections are right. I don't think I do. I had to play around with my setup. Not sure what's happening. Hopefully you can hear that. I just sent a drum machine into my amplifier just to get a signal, and we have signal. It actually sounds kind of distorted, and it sounds pretty low in volume. Probably has a lot to do with our dampening that we neglected to put in. So we were just trying to see if this worked. But in conclusion, it does. It does work. So now the second part, we're probably going to have to go in there and figure out the dampening and figure out why we have such a low volume, and come up with a solution for that. My first thoughts are heat shrink tubing, because what was initially in those heads is probably just some sort of sheet rubber that over time has turned back into the components that made it. Early versions of rubber are kind of, we didn't really have the formula down as good as we do now, so they kind of deteriorate over time, and who knows, with time maybe even our current formulations of rubber will do the same thing and just crumble away. Who knows? We got audio out of it. That's good. All the pieces seem to fit. I think the head's going to be okay now. The only thing that we should probably look at is the dampening material. I think there's a little too much movement in the stylus. I'd like to replace the dampening material that was basically removed or crumbled as we took the pieces apart. I noticed the coil moves a lot more than I like. I believe that they held it in place with a beeswax. Same with our leads here. That beeswax or candle wax or whatever they used has come off. I'd like to replace that and then give it a go. See if I can't get anything out of it. I do have a Gauss meter coming. I don't know how good that Gauss meter is, because all of the professional units that I found, made by like Bell and all of those, they were missing probes and old and much more expensive than the unit that I was able to obtain. I don't know the accuracy of the unit. I kind of did some reviews. Looked like people mostly liked them. I think it'll be fine for what I'm doing. I don't need, like, I'm not working on nuclear missiles or anything. I don't need that kind of accuracy. So I'd like to hit this with the Gauss meter, see what that magnet reads, and then see what a newer magnet with different materials would read, and maybe play around with that. That'll probably be far off in the future. I've got a couple other videos that I need to complete, including trying to emboss with some of these heads. I'm finally circling back around to that as well. I'll cover the complications that I've run across in another video. So that's it for this video. I'll start up another one on the dampening process if there's enough material there, if I get any good results. But for now, the main objective was just to get this to pass audio to know that it's worth keeping, and we accomplished that. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.